Holoscenes is a public art project, and at its core it's colliding the human body with a large volume of moving water. And it's inspired by a lot of things, but particularly a photograph I saw in 2010 of devastating flooding in northern Pakistan. And at that moment, I just saw how beautiful an image of disaster could be, and how conflicted I was about the beauty of the image that reached me all the way from this place in which people were having like horrific difficulties. And I wanted to make a work that was both beautiful and yet had a visceral impact that was that related to basically the fear of flooding and drowning, and whether that's, you know, rivers overflowing or sea level rise, but basically the importance of water in our lives and our fragility in relationship to water. We've been working on Holoscenes for 4 years. It started as a very small idea, and first I had to actually just figure out how to build a team of people who could pull off the project. There's, you know, electrical engineering and hydraulic engineering, structural engineering, as well as lots of design and collaboration with architects to figure out how to create a room which is clear from four sides, which fills with water in less than a minute, and also drains with water in less than a minute, and which people are inside but also safe. So that's not my background is not in hydraulic engineering. So first it was just about vocabulary building and figuring out who could actually help me make this thing. And we premiered it about a year ago in Toronto, and since then have presented it in Sarasota and now in Miami. And I don't think it's a coincidence that our 2 US presentations have been in Florida, since Florida is absolutely at the leading edge of the near-term effects of climate change. I believe that people take in information in many different ways. Some people respond to devastating climate events and say, like let's say a hurricane, and say like, oh, well that's climate change, and now there was a big flood in my backyard, so I'm going to change my behavior, or I'm going to vote differently next time, or I'm going to spend my money differently next time. Some people don't learn or, you know, react to things in that way, and I think art is just art is another way to deliver this message. And there's environmental activists working on this. There's actually people working in government who are working on this. There are many scientists who are working in this, you know, on communicating this issue. And I think as an artist, I'm just participating in that movement.
There's something special about the way that the arts can tackle an issue that's different than how a statistic will. It'll make, hopefully, people think about things in a different way. And generate some conversation about climate change, which is going to affect us all.
You know, I'm one of those people who really believes that art is in the eye of the beholder, and there were definitely things that and ideas that went into the making of the project that were important and crucial to me. One of those was the frailty of the human body in the context of moving water, and I think that relationship resonates very strongly with climate change. And that's one way to think about the piece, as sort of like a coda or a metaphor for climate change. And people are performing, the performers are carrying out these everyday behaviors, reading a newspaper, making the bed, coiling a garden hose. You know, the types of things that make up the everyday life of people all over the world, and are part of the micro patterns of our lives that ultimately, when stitched together, become our lives. And the water, for me, is really a metaphor for the longer term changes that we've actually helped enact and make happen, which relate to sea level rise and glaciers melting, and drought and desertification in other places. And I just wanted to put that longer term pattern and our short term patterns in conversation with each other. The performers, they come from a mixture of theater and dance backgrounds, and one of them is a free diver, and so she actually led our team through a variety of breathing exercises, and which we still keep up with. So the performers can hold their breath from anywhere from 2.5 to 4 minutes, before they get in the tank, they do these things we call calisthenics, where they just do basic poses and basic movements in the water to limber up and get ready and get acclimated to the environment. The water temperature is about 90 degrees, and there's very low chemicals in the water, so it's almost like a sensory deprivation tank. So they actually have a pretty profound physical experience while they're performing the work too. They get into a state. And so what we're always trying to do is get them back into that state, because largely the work by the performers is largely improvised, because they don't know whether the water is going up or down and at what speed and in what pattern. They're reacting to that. They're just adapting in real time. So rather than performing, really specific cues at any particular time, they're trying to get into a state in which they can just improvise. I think that my mixed heritage, and it's a bizarre mix, Afghan and Polish, has led me to, at the very least, have a pretty strong awareness of the world beyond America's borders. And that is a perspective that, as I grew older, I was shocked to realize how different that perspective actually changed what I thought about the rest of the world and what I thought about America. And I know that there's a lot of people who also are in America who also have that perspective from different countries, and there's a lot of people who don't. There's a very surprising percentage of Americans who don't have a passport and have never left the country. And I think fundamentally, I believe that the Earth is one system. Our atmosphere is connected, our water is connected. We have national boundaries that divide us in fairly arbitrary ways that are not that old. And I think I'm interested in the global community having a conversation about climate change because it's impacting everybody. And I think the fact that I'm from some far-flung places, I know what it's like to just live everyday life to some extent in Afghanistan or to some extent in Poland, and I think having that perspective helps me realize that it's not so much an us or them equation. And so to that extent,